I feel like I was, relying on Dis Northwest very early in organizing Youth Ultimate. Aside from just being, before there was Dis Northwest, there was the Puget Sound Ultimate League, which was run by Mark Friedland, who played with the Keg Workers for years and years and years, and is a longtime old friend. And the way we kind of got our Dis Northwest youth, which would become the youth program, started was to just sort of, I realized that nobody was playing before league games, and we had them on Sundays, and no one was on these fields at Magnuson. So I said, maybe I can use that time, and maybe Puget Sound Ultimate League organizers will let me just usurp those fields since no one was on them, and we weren't having to pay for them. So that was good too. And it worked out well because I could get youth kids, kids coming to play Youth Ultimate for, a few hours in the morning before the adults would show up. So that's kind of how I initially got started. And then as time went by, Joey Gray, God bless her, decided she was going to start Dis Northwest. And a series of different executive directors were open and enthusiastic about supporting Youth Ultimate. And I worked with a lot of different people to help, well, not only finance, but also organize and run the league games that were happening on Saturdays. So we switched from Sunday mornings to Saturdays. I started trying to get as many teachers that I knew in other schools, both public and private, to get involved in if they had kids that wanted to play Ultimate. And over time, it just grew from like our first league maybe was in the late 1997, in that time frame. And it grew from like 6 teams the first year to like 12 the next year, kind of exponentially just started to grow. So that was pretty awesome. And the support of all of the executive directors I worked with was really instrumental in helping us to have a solid program. And, they would even do stuff like, if I was helping with another team, like the Moho team, go to another tournament in another spot, they would provide me with the ways and the means to do that, like cover insurance costs and things like that. So I could travel with kids that weren't technically my students or connected to the school that I worked at or any of that. So that was really awesome too. And the stories I can think of is just like the first time I met William Bartram was on a foggy morning for spring rain, and we were out at Magnuson Park. And I was like, at this point, the earliest person there, the first person there to start to set up the fields. And I'm walking around on the fields trying to figure out how to keep the marshy places out of the field of play, because we had that deal with the Parks Department that we would not play on soggy ground and try to preserve the fields. And we were trying to be good stewards. That was one of the things that Joey did early on, was try to, Friends of Athletic Fields, try to, get us a good relationship with the Parks Department, so they would see us as stewards of the land and the parks, and we wouldn't abuse them. And so I'm trying to find the right way to set up the number of fields I need. William kind of comes out and he goes, do you need help? I went, yeah, that would be great. And after that, pretty soon, I mean, he was coaching teams as well at a private school. And pretty soon he became the athletic director. And, we had years where running Spring Rain, once it moved to Burlington, was done basically by Jeff Jorgensen, myself, and Bunny. And we just, we had lots of help from people who volunteered, of course. But the main organizers were us three, and we would be there at the end of the day, and rain or shine, cleaning up the fields and getting it prepared for whatever athletic thing was going to happen next. So honestly, I would never have imagined in those early years that it would morph into this really, really large tournament that served so many different kids from so many different schools. That is definitely a feather in the cap of Dis Northwest, to have such great organization. I mean, once they got a youth division, that really changed the efficiency of everything. It was, nice to have people like Rusty Brown and many, many others doing the work that needed to be done to make that tournament run smoothly, and make it so I could just take a step back from all the things that I had been doing and be there to coach my own team, which I really, I relished those early years, because well, I relished the moment when I got to just coach because it was like running around between trying to organize and troubleshoot anything that happened and then meet your team on the field and try to get them ready for a game. And you, the players of that, many of the teams I had in the early years were quite competitive and they wanted to win and they wanted to be prepared. So it was like a big push me, pull you for me to have to do both of those things. So it was really great to be able to, relinquish a lot of those duties and have other people taking care of the business end of things. I mean, and I think, initially I was bummed about having to go out to Burlington because I thought that that might damage the number of people, the numbers that we would get, that it would lower them because people weren't necessarily going to be so dedicated that they would drive their kids up to Burlington, for two days of a weekend. But that turned out to not happen. I mean, it seemed like once it went to Burlington, it was able to expand you know, to the size that it is today. And, at one point we even had to separate the middle school from the high school because there were just so many people, over 100 teams that were trying to play. And it was great to draw from, other like Canadian teams coming down and other teams in the eastern part of the United States or the central part or even other parts of the Pacific Northwest. So having it go more regional as well as, you know, international was really quite a wonderful thing. And having that relationship that our school had with the St. John Ravenscourt's kids from Winnipeg was really, really special, as you well know. um, the early years were, I would say, with only a small number of people doing most of the organization, were much harder. And then as time went by, it got easier and easier and easier. And today, I think that the number of volunteers that Dis Northwest gets, it used to be like in the very first days, I would get parents from my students to run a barbecue, and they were quite good. As you know, a lot of our parents are really good at organizing things, and they would take on the responsibility of getting all the food and making sure that they had enough people there to prepare it. And it was basically my school's thing for a period of time. And then it became volunteers from a lot of the other schools. We started saying, hey, parents, from these other schools, you need to step up and help us do this if we're going to have food on the field for the kids and stuff like that. And then now Dis Northwest just has it down. They've got a formula that works really well. Once they also began to get a vendor. The first vendor was the Five Ultimate Group. Having a vendor take care of all the artwork and produce the discs and make the t-shirts, that was huge because I would basically go to school and say, hey, anybody want to design a Frisbee? Hey, anybody want to design a t-shirt? And rely on my students to do that for us. And then sometimes other people from other schools would have their kids do it too. So we would, run a little contest and try to get a cool design. And I was all about, honestly, I hate to say this, but I don't like to buy Frisbees that don't have cool designs. And I had a huge collection. So I was like, I really want a cool design. I don't want it to look, like somebody just threw some words on the top of a platter and that was that. I want it to look good. I want people to want to buy it. So it potentially could earn money for the program. So that was good. I think that having that next step was just the logical business step to take that really made things professional and also took the burden of responsibility off of a handful of people and made it, something that someone else, a business could make money off of and also work well for the program. Yeah. The moves that they took to in diversity, equity, inclusion to help people bring schools in and having other coaches from other places, especially in the south end of Seattle, made a huge difference in the growth and the appeal of our sport to all kinds of people from all different walks of life, which I think is great. And Sam Terry and a lot of the stuff that's been done with Age Up, those things are just, I think, quite amazing offshoots of, I'm sure that because here's what I would say, Dis Northwest created this platform for people to be able to play, this space for them to be able to play. And then other people took off from that. And because there was this large pool of ultimate players and they worked hard to develop them in their own schools, and Dis Northwest helped them, they were able to develop other programs which would expand the sport to other people. I also love being able to meet people that have just moved to Seattle that I know are interested in playing ultimate and saying, hey, all you got to do is go to Dis Northwest website, there'll be a space for you there. You can play at any level you want, from the highest level to recreational. And if you have kids, they can play too. And I think, that I don't really know. I'm sure that other cities have regional nonprofit organizations that do the same thing, but I couldn't compare them. I just know BC had one that was really functional for a period of time. And we didn't go to BC very often, which is unfortunate. I mean, we didn't take our teams there. We pretty much went to Winnipeg when we could, in Canada, and we didn't always take advantage of things that were a little bit more local. And I don't really honestly know. I know you and I struggled to find other tournaments that we could take our kids to that were either in California or Oregon, or ideally BC, and never really found one that was, easy for us to get to and also affordable. And they could exist today. I haven't looked in a while, but I feel like it would have been great if we could have had, if the next level of play for young people is to have other places in the country for them to go to play ultimate besides Spring Rain, like at a competitive level. And of course, now there's the national programs, but there's not a middle school national tournament, right? Okay, so hey, that needs to happen, and I think USA Ultimate should be doing that. Should be working on that if they aren't already. I sure would like to see them be able to garner as much donated money as they need to grow their programs. I know many of the people that I played Ultimate with donate to Disc Northwest. I myself have donated to Disc Northwest. I don't want to just focus only on a money thing, but I think it's really important if you have a pool of money. It's like when I needed help, I went to Northwest and said, I don't know how I can pay for fields. Can you pay for fields? And they were like, yeah, we'll pay for your fields. And because they had some money to do that, that made it happen for me. I didn't have to struggle to go get money from other places to run my program. And I think COVID was a problem, having things slow down during COVID. I don't know if that affected their budgets, but I'm sure it must have affected most nonprofits' budgets. I hope that they will always be able to tap into the resources of the community to help them grow their program. I think supporting more outreach of different kinds of programs in different places, in different parts of the city and in different parts of the state would be good. Like, I have a piece of property over in Eastern Washington, and I'm constantly thinking, wow, I don't ever see people playing Ultimate out here. I wonder if I could just show up at a community center and say, hey, I'm going to start a youth Ultimate team. Anybody want to play? And, have the resources available to get that stuff. I think, pods of money for people who don't have the resources to start a program, because again, it's so cheap to start it, but you still have to pay for the fields, and you have to have discs for the kids to throw, and all of those things that were provided to me by Disc Northwest. I think if we can offer them to other people in other places and continue to promote the mission, which is growing the sport.